Welcome back to the Marketer of the Day podcast. We are going to be talking today about speaking on podcasts. We are going to be talking today about leveraging sales. We are going to be talking about outbound marketing and who knows what we will fit in. Today, our guest is Mark Colgan. He is an entrepreneur. He is a revenue leader responsible for increasing revenue across a small portfolio of companies where he leverages his 13 years experience of B2B sales, marketing, and recruitment. He has the cold email bootcamp course, the Sales Impact Academy course. Super exciting. So much to talk about. Mark, glad to be talking to you.
Yeah, really glad to be here, Robert. Thanks for inviting me on.
My pleasure. Happy to have you here. And so what has been your focus the last 6 months or so? What do you feel like talking about? What is your passion? What has you fired up?
Sure. So I think my main focus of where most of my energy is going is speaking on podcasts. So building that agency and helping people speak on more podcasts and get their message out there.
Well, fantastic. And this is one of those like right place, right time situations for me, because as you know, you're on my podcast right now. We have 800 plus episodes, and lately I've been maybe more diligent with it and more about having the calendar full and having guests on, but going on other podcasts is a thing I still only do about maybe once a month, if that. And I feel like I always beat myself up about it. I feel like I need to be on like at least a podcast per week, ideally maybe even 2 or 3. And so, I mean, what do you have to say to that for someone like me who says, I know I need to do it, I'm blocked for some reason, I'm hesitating to do it, but I really want to?
Sure. Well, I think someone like yourself who's a podcast host, you should feel confident that you'll be great on the mic or on camera. So I wouldn't worry too much about not having things to say. A lot of the times our customers come to us and they're not too sure if they have anything of value, but if they've been in business and people are paying them to help them overcome a challenge or a problem, they've got a lot that they can really offer in terms of value. So we often say, what are the common questions that you get asked by your customers? What controversial opinions do you have? Controversial being not unethical, but maybe opinions that go against the grain. But if you've got time to speak on podcasts and you don't have time to do the actual pitching and booking and scheduling, then that's when you can work with a company like ours.
And I definitely see the value in that, because anytime, and maybe that's the answer, because every time I've tried to either do the booking myself or I have a little bit of a team and I try to outsource it to them, there's so much like throwing the ball and catching the ball. And it seems like it takes like by like the third or fourth message in the email to actually get booked. Sometimes I'll like look up all these podcasts, I'll send a message, and then I won't hear back from them. I'll send another one, and they'll say, oh, sure, we can schedule. And it's just like, it takes sometimes it takes months later to do it. And it's also, it's so tedious. I hate doing it. And then even assigning it to someone else, I'm like watching what they're doing and they're not even sure. And it seems like having a team or hiring someone that just knows this. And I imagine too that even though it is a little bit tedious and there's a lot of steps, I imagine that someone like you has a network of podcast hosts where they'll just respond right away, right? I mean, there's like the one aspect of all the management of it, but I imagine that when you send an email and you say, I have this guest, there's like a quick response. It's not 8 emails later.
Absolutely, yeah. So we have got preferential relationships with quite a few podcast hosts, but we always say to the team, or the mantra in the team is audience first. If it's not right for our customer, we're not going to reach out to that podcast host just because we've got that relationship. We're not looking for the shortcuts. We want to make sure it's really, really relevant podcast for the individual customers.
Well, cool. And that makes perfect sense, right? Why waste anyone's time? And every now and then I like to have a guest off the beaten path. Like I'll talk to like an accountant or an artist or something. And that's sort of fun to do something different, but sometimes I wonder if I'm wasting their time. And I also think, well, I don't want every single episode to be some other weird guest who like maybe is not quite on the podcast that they should be. And so there's that aspect of it. But then, so you said that there's like a big problem that your customers have is being afraid that they won't have something to say. And so you said to make that inventory of questions you already get asked, controversial opinions that you have, and things like that. And so what are the other maybe objections for people appearing on podcasts? Because I think like for myself, I think there's maybe like the time aspect, like I'm worried about committing in advance to time in the calendar and thinking, well, I'm excited about it now, but I'm not sure I'll be excited about it next Tuesday. And then I'm also maybe worried about like the having like the right materials, because I have a bio, but I'm like, is that the right bio? Do they want to see any materials? Do they want to do a pre-call? So what other things besides just like the questions are your clients concerned about?
Well, Robert, you've nailed them. Time and being prepared with the content or the follow-up as well. So from a time point of view, not to turn this interview into a pitch for my company, but we thought of everything. So all we ask for our customers is an hour and 15 minutes in the first month from us. That's all we want from you. And then we'll go and build all of the assets that you need. So we build the bio, the profile, come up with the topics, and we actually package it up in a really neat landing page, because it's 2021. No one wants to send PDFs and receive PDFs. So we create a landing page, and that serves as the media kit that you then don't have to create. And then it comes to preparing and being confident with what it is that you want to talk about. And what we do with our customers is we do a test interview that gets recorded, but we never publish it, but we give feedback. And sometimes that feedback, Robert, is pages and pages of feedback. And we also pay for an hour session with a presentation coach that we partnered with. So you can go and do a 1 hour one-on-one training session with her, and she's fantastic. And a number of clients have signed up to work with her for public speaking in general as well. So it's a win-win-win scenario.
That's pretty cool. I hadn't even thought of that. Didn't even know that was a thing of a number one, having the test interview. That way there can be the dry run. That way that they can just kind of see how it goes and know what the conversation will be like with the intro and the outro and the questions and the places they're nervous and might get stuck. So that in it itself is cool. And also with the presentation coach to catch some of those things that, and I mean, I'm sure that, like we all have these weird ticks. Like I went through a phase once where I said awesome like almost every sentence, and then I'm from I think you're from like Portugal, right?
I'm from London, but I live in Portugal now.
Okay, so you're in Europe, but then here in America, and especially in the California region, we say like almost every sentence. So there are little things like that where I kept on saying that, and it's like you're aware that you say it, but it's just you're not, and you're afraid of even thinking about it. And having that other person give that list of notes that I can look at my leisure seems very, very valuable and very convenient. And you said, Mark, that you're afraid of making this a pitch session for a company, but go ahead and pitch if that makes you more comfortable, because my thinking here is that if people are listening to this particular episode and they have this specific problem, then they should know about the solution. So they should know at least what the process will be like once they're in, once they want to give you and your team and your services a shot. And my thinking too is, like, if we're looking to make a change and we sign up for one of these kind of monthly services, or we give it a go, why not just dedicate ourselves for a set length of time and try it out. And so you said that when someone signs up for your service, there's these things of doing like the test interview and making the landing page and things like that. And so maybe like the first 30 days or so, what is the typical journey as far as like number of podcasts on and like the time commitment in that whole first month?
Yeah, so the way that we work, and I really like your comment of committing to a campaign. So we work in a campaign of 6 months. Within 6 months, we guarantee 24 podcast interviews booked for our customers. But the first month, we take our time with the onboarding. So we really want to dive into detail on the audience that you want to be speaking in front of, who do you want to be listening to you, the topics you can talk about. So we do this 1 hour 15 onboarding call, but that's all we really need from you in the first month. And then we do a lot of the work behind the scenes. We research to find best fit podcasts, and we'll share that with our customers to say, are we on the right track? Yes, no, maybe. Let us know the no's and the maybes so we can adapt our research in the future. And then we prepare the topics and the media page and everything like that, share that with our customers for approval too. Once we get the green light, we're ready to do the outreach. We listen to every podcast that we reach out to, listen to several episodes at times to really look for the angle that's going to be most relevant between the podcast guest and the host. And in some cases, I check the emails that my team send out, and it's like, P.S. John is also a black belt in jiu-jitsu too. And it's like we found out all these amazing things about the podcast host and the customers, and we try and make those connections. So results wise, typically we get our first positive replies in week 4 and week 5 for customers. So the onboarding month is a ramp up period. And then we can go faster or slower. And we've had some customers say, whoa, 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 slow down. I'm getting too many great podcast interviews. So we can kind of slow down our efforts. But as you mentioned at the very beginning, that the secret is really in the follow-up. Emails get missed. People don't reply when they want to. So we have a very sophisticated follow-up process as well that builds upon the value that we're demonstrating in those first emails.
And so you mentioned the follow-up, and for some reason when you say that word, what comes to mind is the contacting after the interview. And I think that that's something where I think that everyone's lacking, even some of these podcast agencies that send me emails, because as you know, if you have almost any podcast, you'll have like 10 or 12 of these booking agencies just always sending you guests. And usually I say, like, give me everybody. If you give me 3 people's PDF bios, well, I mean, you do the landing page, but I get 3 bios. I say, give me all 3 people and I'll get them all scheduled. But then it's, so I would say maybe 10 or 20% of those agencies then like circle back around and ask when the episode's live. Almost no one even contacts me afterwards. So it seems like if you and your team do that, that's like such an easy way to stand out, because that's always the question too is, well, there's all these, we've all heard of like podcast booking agencies, and you type it in Google, there's just such a long list, and you wonder like, well, what makes you stand out and unique compared to the rest? So what's the answer there, Mark? If there are maybe like 200, 300 different podcast agencies, why go with you guys?
Yeah, so can I swear on this podcast?
Go for it. Sure.
We give a shit. I think that's the biggest difference. We really care about the relevancy of the podcast that we find for our customers. We care about the reputation as well. So we know that some of the other well-known podcast booking agencies do send templated emails that are like, Mark can talk about A, B, and C. But they haven't made the job easier for the podcast host. So that's one way that we stand out differently, is that we look for what we believe would be the most valuable talking point out of all of the topics that the customer can speak about, to take the work away from the podcast host. And then as you said about the follow-up, we check in after every podcast interview with the host and the customers as well. So we ask the customer, how did it go? We ask the host, how did it go as well? Now, sometimes I look at the emails that we're sending, I'm like, God, we're sending out so many emails because we're booking so many interviews. But until we get asked to not send that follow-up email to say, you know, how did everything go with Andrew? We'll continue to do so. And we hope we're not really upsetting too many people. But yeah, just generally caring about the reputation and not spamming. We have 2 customers, the ones that pay us, and then the podcast hosts who don't pay us, but they pay us in kindness by accepting our guests, sometimes first time round, sometimes on a repeat basis.
Well, super cool. And I like kind of that you say you're not spamming, you're like sending like, you know, real thoughtful, customized messages. You say, well, such and such also does jujitsu or black belt. And that's really cool. And I love when podcast booking agencies do that. And I love when they maybe stalk me a little bit, because like you said, there's that fear of saying like, well, am I being too annoying, or am I contacting them? But we all get busy. And like you said, if it's annoying, I'll say, and then it'll stop. But I love when, because sometimes I'll try to connect with some guests and the scheduling just won't work out, right? Like we'll schedule and one of us will cancel. And sometimes it might be 3 or 6 months until we finally connect. And I love when that happens. And when I see like a big old long email list of like, they kept working on me and they kept working on me. And like I saw on your website on speakonpodcast.com, you have like all these, you know, podcast covers. And I think one of your clients is Brad Lee. And I love guys like Brad Lee and Grant Cardone who say things like they work on someone for like 17 years and they just keep every month like making another phone call. Or one guy was like, I think calling like Grant or Brad and saying like, hey, you left me 36 voicemails. Why won't you leave me alone? And then finally he left him alone. But it just, for some reason, some things like that make me giggle a little bit. If someone is being maybe not pushy, but like over a long length of time, persistent and saying like, hey, I know it didn't work out last time. Is there this guest? Is there this guest? And it's kind of, I know it's a fine line between like being too pushy or not, but I consider that maybe like the opposite of spamming. If there's a guest who's like a really good fit for my show, they really should be on it. And they just keep on trying another angle and saying, hey, can we try it? And even like sometimes when a couple of years later, I'll have a guest on and the booking agency will say, hey, it's been 2 years, like such and such has some new book and we already have this existing relationship. Do you want to hop back on? And I'm thinking like, whoa, I'm not just a row in a spreadsheet. I'm someone that they actually thought of to promote the book, and that's super cool. And so what I'm hearing from a lot of these answers from you is that there's so many little tiny pieces in the process. There's so many logistics, so many things that people have not even considered, like the follow-up and the landing page and things like that. And I keep thinking about, like, I had an author on once who he had such a good process. He got booked on the show. I think he sent me like a postcard. He sent his book in the mail. Afterward, he sent like brownies and things like that. So, I mean, we've been talking about just a swirl of ideas here, but is there something that you and your booking agency do as far as like all these little pieces that should be in place that just so many people don't even know that they should be doing, that you and your team do as part of your process?
Yeah, so I think it's the follow-up is one of the things. That there's a few things of secret sauce that we do. Some that I'm happy to share, which I am sharing now. Others that I like to keep a secret. We focus on delight as much as we can. How can we make this engagement a delightful experience for the podcast host and for the customer? And there's things that we're looking to improve all the time as well. What more can we do to nurture the relationship for our customers between the podcast host? But again, there's that fine line of is it us that should do that or our customers? We don't want to be talking on their behalf. But yeah, really focusing on delight. We've recorded thousands of videos as thank you. So we record a thank you video once we've secured an interview for a customer. No one's told us to do it. I don't know what the return on investment is, but we still do it. And the team love doing it as well. It's such a positive business to be in. We have this channel, Robert, called Time for Confetti. And as soon as we get an interview book or a new interview confirmed, someone will post it in Slack and like everybody goes crazy on the emojis. And it's just so nice to scroll through this on any given day and see all of the positive news.
Well, that's great. And those two things there, those are good reminders in general, whether it's to get a peek inside of you and your company, but also just as far as like doing business and staying consistent and making money and things like that. That number one, just doing those really quick videos. And I always forget about that and how easy it is, right? You take your phone or you take your web camera, and if there's someone that you want to talk to or say something or give a compliment or say, I was just thinking about you or something like that, how hard is it to click the record button and talk for 30 seconds, 60 seconds, send it off? So few people do it. And again, including a lot of these podcast booking agencies, right? I can't think of even one time when I got someone scheduled and I got a quick video saying, hey, thanks for doing that. And then you're also saying that how important it is and how to celebrate those small wins, even if it might be cheesy, it might be a little hokey, but like, why not do it if this is what you're spending the bulk of your waking hours doing, if this is your passion, if this is your life purpose, when you get one step closer in the right direction, you book that podcast interview, you make things happen. It's a positive thing. Why not celebrate it? And why not celebrate it with the team? So that's just like a good idea in general, right? In any business, if there's something that moves things forward, why not celebrate it with the team, no matter what the heck it is? And so okay, we've covered so many different like objections and ideas and cool things so far. And so what is the typical like I don't know, like attitude moving forward? Because we've talked about there's kind of the 1 month ramp up process, that there's the 6 months of ideally 24 podcast interviews. Afterwards, like, what does the typical client do? Is the book launch over? Do they go into like maintenance mode? Is it like one a week, one a month? What happens after 6 months with your clients?
Sure. I just want to quickly get one other thing that we do just to celebrate the win and give back a little bit is we plant a tree for every interview that we book. So whenever we reach a milestone of 100 trees, one of our team members gets to pick a project where they want to plant these trees, and they can pick wherever they want to. Sometimes it's the country that they live in or from they're from, or maybe somewhere that they visited. We've just planted 100 new trees in Indonesia on some projects there as well, because we reached another milestone. So again, rewarding the team and giving back to the environment in this case as well. Post 6 months, so 60% of our customers that can renew have decided to renew with us. We've actually got one customer who's renewed for the third time. When I say that can renew, what I mean by this is sometimes our customers have quite a niche audience, and really there's not many more podcasts to go on after 24 podcasts have been achieved. So we either agree on a smaller amount or we just renew the campaign. And sometimes there's a change in focus, changing topics. But what we see, or what we've witnessed from hearing feedback from our customers, is that podcasting is such an evergreen channel for them that people are discovering the interviews months, even years after they've been on the interview. So they can consistently get conversations with people, and people are like, yeah, no, I heard you on so-and-so's podcast, or I heard you speaking to Robert about the topic. And one of our customers just the other day said that a third of her group coaching cohort that recently that she enrolled, a third of them had heard her on a podcast. So it's just such a powerful medium that not just because I'm in the business of it, Robert, but I think so many people don't realize the potential that podcasting has for them.
I mean, I think you're so right. And you're making me think back to maybe 10 years ago plus, when I would do live events sometimes, or I would go and speak physically at live events, which, I mean, that's so old school. That's so out of date, of getting on a plane and wasting a day traveling and a day traveling back and just waiting around just for your 60 or 90 minute slot to speak. And I remember thinking back then, like, I would just love to just show up. I would just love to show up to an event where there were people in the room, and I can just be there, give my presentation, and be done, and not have to do with all of the hassle of everything else. And now that podcasting, it seems like every year becomes more and more of a thing. Now it seems like that's finally possible, especially if we don't go it alone, right? Especially if we have a team like at speakonpodcast.com, where we don't have to either try to figure out all this old school stuff or try to figure out, I mean, you and I are probably listed like 50 to 80 different nooks and crannies of things that need to be done, like the bio, the test interview, the outreach, the making a quick video when you get the thing booked, maybe even if you miss each other or need to rebook, figuring that out, or figuring out how the Zoom link, figuring out how the interview went. And I mean, there's like so many different things that need to be done in place. And what also is a disadvantage is if you try to do it by yourself, you might think at first that you're saving some money, but you're wasting all this time. And how many years would it take to get good? And how many years would it take to figure out a streamlined process like you and your team already have, which like you do every day, and it's like the core or the bulk of what you do, and you're always refining the process. And you said that you care maybe even more than these people being on their podcast. So why? I mean, there's like 24 advantages to doing it your way, and maybe like 3 advantages to doing it the let me be arrogant and do it my own self way. So it seems like a no-brainer. But I imagine that maybe one final or near final objection near the end here is the price. And I know that asking about price is kind of dicey because prices change. Sure. There's a price range, things like that. But approximately, how much can someone expect to pay for this very excellent podcasting service?
Yeah, so we actually try to keep it as simple as possible, a little bit like our name. It says what it does. So our pricing is $1,800 per month for 6 months. So that's $1,800 per month for 6 months. And yeah, we just keep it as simple as that.
Super cool. $1,800 a month for 6 months. And as you said, you get on 24 of the right podcasts, not hundreds of little podcasts that are like took you so much work to get on or are the wrong fit. You get on these 24 podcasts. That way you can get this evergreen traffic from people who might have heard from you years ago, who might become coaching clients, who might buy your courses, who might buy your book, things like that. And like you said, Mark, some of your clients say this huge percentage of my buyers for this were directly from podcasts. And speaking to that, kind of as we're getting near the tail end of our conversation, what would you say about kind of the tracking of these buyers? Does your agency do things like setting up different landing pages, or like how would someone be able to see the return on investment or the result from this podcasting effort?
It's a really, really good question, Robert, and it's such a hard question to answer because podcasts are consumed in so many different ways. That people running, people driving, people just listening while they're walking their children. You know, it's not like they're in front of the computer every time. So there are a number of ways that you can track podcasts, and we do help with some of those as well. You can create a specific landing page. You could either do this for podcasting in general or each individual podcast, depending on the team you have. And you can direct people to go to speakonpodcast.com/strategy, for example. And I will only say that link on podcast interviews that I go on. So anybody that signs up via that link or converts via that link is a way for me to say, okay, well, they've probably heard me from a podcast. But what we do, and it's not the most sophisticated, but it's the most accurate way, is when you're speaking to your potential customers or when they're converting on a form, ask them where they heard from you. You're still not going to get 100% accuracy, but that is another way to attribute it as well. And it's the feeling of it too. What a different customer who's a coach, she turned around and said, I've never felt more confident in what it is that I do because I've said it so many times now. And I'm able to articulate exactly how I help people because of all the stories that I'm telling, all of the anecdotes that I'm using as well. So there is obviously the monetary benefits that you could tie it back to, but there's also some of the personal ones, like the personal brand and being known, liked, and trusted, and having people come to you. You can't directly attribute that to cash, but it certainly feels good. It's not negative anyway.
I like that a lot, that it helps to become the best version of yourself in a presenter, speaker, business sort of sense. And I think that we can all think about if there's that like favorite like author that we know, or that speaker that we know, or even like YouTuber that we know, like they have these refined answers and there's these refined stories, and they're not fake, they're not made up, but they're just things that if you went back and looked at their YouTube channel from 10 years ago, or if you looked at their blog or the LinkedIn from 10 years ago versus maybe like their book that just came out, or like a really polished presentation, you can see how maybe they tried out different material, kind of sort of like how a stand-up comedian does, right?
I was just going to say, like a comedian. Yeah,
like they think of different jokes and they try them out here, they try them out there, and you can spend all day long thinking that you have the most clever thing or it's funny to you, but you try it out, and even like some of the things that you think aren't very good, just the masses really like them. So why not use that feedback, use that data to really refine your branding and get the know, like, and trust like you're talking about here, Mark, so that way that we can be the best. And then just moving forward, being on other podcasts, now we can almost do it in our sleep, and we blow people away with the solutions and the simplicity and just how easy and fun it can be. And so I think anyone would be crazy to not use you and your services on Speak On Podcast, because otherwise you're just guessing. It's a shot in the dark. You might give up, you might get burned out. And I can imagine that your clients, when they're when they're getting people who say, I heard you on this podcast, or they're talking to different podcast hosts, now they're not going in alone. Like there's you and your team helping them out, sure, but then also seeing the feedback from the customers and like the masses and things like that, that's got to be really encouraging, right? To see other people amazed, wowed, impressed by what you have to say. It's got to really get you super motivated to continue.
It really is. I mean, if you were to look at our website, we have more testimonials from podcast hosts than we do from the amount of customers that we've served. Even if we had one testimonial from every customer, we'd still have more. And they're not testimonials, they're just saying, great job. I really like the approach. Like, this is the first sort of outbound email like this that I've ever replied to as a podcast host. And that makes me happy every day. And then also seeing customers, a message just came in today. One of our new customers, he's just moved into his second month now. They said, I've been speaking about you to everybody. I have a friend who's just about to launch her second book. She's going to book a call with Mark soon to speak to him. I've been really happy with the service so far. That just makes me happy. It's Friday night as we're recording this. I'm going to turn my laptop off soon and have a great restful weekend, knowing that the team is working and the service is awesome.
I mean, it must be really good. What you're doing, an amazing job. You're in this really cool relationship business. And so what's the next step here? If people say, I'm like super impressed and I'm chomping at the bit, I want to go to the website, I want to sign up, or maybe like book a call and figure out what I need to know, something like that. Where do people go if they are ready to rock and roll, or if they're almost there?
Sure. I think I'd always prefer to have a call first, because I want to make sure that podcast guesting is the right strategy for them, where they are in their journey and what they're looking to achieve. But anybody could go to speakonpodcast.com/strategy. And what they'll have is a 30-minute conversation with me where we'll go through their goals, their audience, and we'll either cover some potential topics that they could speak about, and they'll get this blueprint that we'll send out after, and they can essentially take that away, re-listen to this podcast, try it themselves. But if they want to work with us, then obviously they can set up that time too.
Super great. So it is a win-win. Even if they decide, well, the timing isn't quite right, they can get the plan, try it themselves on a small scale, and then maybe say, whoa, this is a lot harder than I thought it might have been doing it on my own. Let me go back to Mark and his team. And now I'm a lot more educated jumping in, so that way they can do it the right way for me. And you said speakonpodcast.com/strategy. That is the place to go right now. And any final parting words of advice here, Mark, as we wrap up, wind down our conversation?
Yeah, too. And it goes back to the confidence or not knowing what to say, and something that you mentioned as well. So there's two things. The first is what's obvious to you is often amazing to others. That's not my quote. I think it's Derek Silvers that said that quote, but what's obvious to you is amazing to others. So remember that. And then the other kind of trick for the mind when you're speaking, if you are going to do your podcast interview, is they don't know what they don't know. So no one knows, like when we're speaking today, Robert, I could have had a bullet point list of 15 things that I wanted to say and I forgot 5 of them, but the audience isn't going to know that. And when you mention like having a tick or a stammer or always saying like you're aware of that, unless it's overtly obvious, an audience member wouldn't necessarily pick up on that as well. So I've used that mind trick for my whole life. They don't know what they don't know.
I like that a lot. And I imagine that and you're showing the value of things that maybe took you decades to realize, like a whole lifetime to figure out a couple of these quick nuggets, and you're giving everyone else the shortcut, because now you can just say, here's all these years of knowledge for me to arrive at this conclusion. Let me just give this to you. Let me just give you the answer and save you all the work of getting to that realization. So very helpful, very reassuring. Speakonpodcast.com/strategy. We will see you there. And thank you, Mark, for stopping by and having a random conversation, but that's how I like to do it. Like to have fun. It's very helpful. I think will help a lot of people. So thank you so much for showing up.
Cheers, Robert. Really appreciate it. Take care.